Okay.
All right. So thanks, everyone.
Good morning. I'm Ling Young. I'm a senior engineering consultant with Efficiency Vermont, and I'm here with Bryn and my colleague Tim. I'll let Tim introduce himself.
Yep. Good morning. I'm Tim Yandow. I'm a program manager here at Efficiency Vermont in our residential programs. So I'm here to assist Ling, who really initiated this. I'm very grateful for you pulling this together, Ling and Bryn. It's a very important topic.
Thanks.
So for the most relevant to this presentation today, Tim runs the residential new construction program,
right.
Which has a long history at Efficiency Vermont, which we'll talk about. And I know some of the people who are on the call, but then there are a few people that I don't know. So I know that we have like design build companies. We have like consultant and energy consultant types. Do we have like a home inspector? Maybe if you could just put in the chat what the nature of your business is, or even like what you aspirationally want your business to be. Ethan has a hand up. Bryn, do you do that?
I'm a home inspector, yes.
Oh, Ethan. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I think, let me just look at who all the participants are, and let me just see if there's anybody else I have a question about. Or really, I mean, maybe, just if everybody could put their type of business in the chat, then everybody else can see that. Ben?
I just wanted to let you know, I think the chat is disabled again.
Okay. All right. I will look into that. Thank you for the feedback.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Ben.
we had that issue yesterday.
Okay, I'm going to launch into this. So Tim said that I wanted to make this happen, and I did very much want to make this happen. And my purpose here today is to let folks in Vermont know what the opportunities are to start up an energy rating, a successful profit-turning energy rating business in Vermont. So we're going to talk about some things that would feed a market demand for energy ratings. We're going to talk about what maybe the future of Efficiency Vermont support for energy rating businesses in Vermont will be. And we'll talk about how to become an energy rater. And I will call out some things that I think are important to sort of take on board before you launch into this kind of work, so that you know, maybe, like just information that you need to know to make a profitable business. And I do definitely welcome questions throughout, because it's possible that like I'm not really hitting the mark in terms of what you need to know or what you want to know. Oh, and since Steve is here, Steve, do you want to introduce yourself before I get going?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Steve Spatz. I work with Efficiency Vermont as an account manager, and I have worked in our residential engineering and new construction programs as well. Prior to moving into account management, so I work with a lot of our EEN contractors currently and our different trade ally groups that we have here at Efficiency Vermont, and also spend a lot of time with the code and do a lot of code trainings, and been working around this area for quite a while. So thanks for joining us this morning.
And importantly, if in the future time when we have a trade group for energy raters in Vermont, Steve will be the main interface with that group. Ethan, I see that your hand is up. Do you have another thing that you want to add at this point before we get going? Bryn, is Ethan able to be unmuted?
Yep, he should have the option, but I think it was just a holdover.
From earlier, yeah.
Okay, so here's our agenda. Again, use the chat or if the chat's not working, just like put your hand up and shout it out about what other things that you feel like you really want us to cover in the course of this. And if it's not tucked into one of these agenda items, I will make sure to address it. So let's talk about the home energy rating system, which is usually just called HERS. So this is what I thought was important to talk about in terms of what the home energy rating system is. It is a national system, although ResNet, which I'll talk about in time, really would like to think of it as a continental system. So we have a strong connection to the Canadian HERS industry also. So it's a North American system for measuring the energy efficiency of a home and really scoring. That's what HERS is about, is about coming up with a score. It is, by design, it's third-party verified, and that is something that is strongly defended by both the HERS standard and by ResNet, the governing sort of body that oversees HERS at this point. So third-party verified, meaning that people are not just allowed to make claims about the energy efficiency of their home or their HERS score. So no greenwashing, right? So third-party verified means that it adheres to a standard, and there's folks outside of the build of the home that check it out and verify it. It is based on an ANSI standard, so the standard has gone through all of that consensus and comments and all of the process that goes into creating an ANSI standard that underlies the HERS standards. At this point, it's governed by ResNet, which I don't think really stands for anything. I think it's just ResNet, and that's an accreditation organization. The HERS system is used by green building labels such as Energy Star. And there I say Passive House, but it's really PHIUS, which is Passive House Institute in the US. So it's not the Passive House that you would find in Europe, which is actually spelled differently than that. But in any case, like, there are lots of green labels that use a HERS rating as sort of the first step in achieving that designation. And it's used to, so a HERS rating also can be used to qualify homes for energy efficiency financing, for green appraisals, for tax credits, show compliance with different things, most importantly, the energy code. And so, yeah, okay, so I'll just leave it there.
I'll just add one last thing to that too, is that it was, the HERS metric and the numerical way of evaluating the efficiency of a home was, this was also established as a part of the real estate industry being able to show the difference of energy performance from one home to another. So it's also used by the mortgage industry and by realtors in now I'm going to forget the name of the
appraisal industry.
Yeah, now I'm forgetting the listings, MLS listings can be populated with various inputs and various details, and this is one that is a part of that process as well. So it's another metric and another way it folds into the overall residential housing industry. Yes,
Stephen, if you could remind me to bring up Jeff Gebhardt when we get to the history of energy ratings part, which actually maybe is the next slide. I really would like to make that connection a little firmer, but sure. I do, since you brought that up, I want to call out in that the blue box in the lower right corner, it says green appraisals there, which folks may not have heard of before. But a green appraisal is, it comes right from the appraisal industry, the Appraisal Institute, and it is a formal way to record the green and energy efficient attributes of a home. So Steve, you weren't here for this part, but we do have a home inspector like on the call, and other people of course will know what an appraisal is. And so the HERS actually can support valuation, like valuation of the energy efficient features of the home.
And it's one thing that's been used and what Efficiency Vermont had been trying to facilitate with the green energy appraisal was the ability for a builder or homeowner to be able to borrow the capital they need to build an efficient home, by way of having an appraisal that shows the overall net value to the building for building it to a higher level of efficiency, and also the lower operating costs and ownership costs of that building, to allow for a lender to be able to justify, putting more money out there to help build the home at the outset when you're looking at comparisons to other homes in your area. A really highly efficient home, a passive house, is a different animal than a code built or track built home. So it's a way to note that valuation in the process of lending.
Yeah, and that the number of homes that are available now in that category of high performance has really grown a lot for those of us that were builders back during the time when that was just starting. It was even though that was the intent, there weren't a lot of structures to compare to. So it's a good thing that that has really grown, and that's become easier now, I think, for builders now to access that that capability through a rating.
Okay, so we're still in the section about what is HERS, and so the next few slides here go through the components of an energy rating. So first off is like, even before the home is built, before an energy rating happens, there's the design consulting, and this is, it's a question of really about business model, but oftentimes the rater, and I will say that Efficiency Vermont, this is very much the way that we have run our energy rating service, is that the rater will provide design consulting services. So it could be like reviewing air sealing details. It could be providing support on selection of green stuff, material selection, equipment selection, looking at the building science implications of the design, maybe doing an energy rating, so doing the actual analysis before the home is built, to use the analysis for things like, will you earn the tax credit with the design that you have, or does this design meet the energy code? And then at that point also evaluating, so this is again, before the home is built, evaluating compliance with whatever program either is required to be adhered to, like the energy code, or that the client has identified. If the client wants to meet the National Green Building Standard, which is comes out of the National Home Builders Association, if that's what their goal is, then you want to evaluate before the home is built whether or not the design can meet the NGBS, the National Green Building Standard, so that there can be changes to the design if necessary to meet the client's goals.
And now also upcoming with the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed.
We'll get there.
That's in there too. Okay.
Well, yeah, we're getting to all of it. Okay, so this is second on the list of things that are part of the energy rating is inspections. They obviously happen live, on site, in person. This is not something that happens in a Zoom call. So you go to the site to evaluate the quality of the assemblies that contribute to the performance aspects of the home. And you're just inspecting for things that are sort of in the purview of energy consumption, building performance, durability, things that might impact health, things like that. And if a design review has been done, then you're also able to compare things that are the as-built condition of the building as compared to the design of the building. You're also there at this point to document program compliance. So for instance, if a program requires that there are 30 wall insulation and you arrive and discover that the building has only been built with R25 wall insulation, then you can flag that as a program compliance issue. You know, usually at this point it's a little hard to pivot, but at least, you know, you're there at a point when you can evaluate whether the house is going to comply with the program. And you need to collect data during most of the inspections that will happen at a point where you need to be collecting data at that point that will later on feed into the energy rating. So remember that I said that an energy rating is third-party verified. So that means you cannot base an energy rating on a set of plans. It has to be verified to be built, you know, with the data that you're going to use to create the analysis and the energy rating score. Okay, so the third component of an energy rating is performance testing. So this is blower door testing, duct leakage testing, making sure the ventilation system is working correctly and measuring ventilation flow. With all of these things, there could be an element of identifying things that need to be improved. So it's not at all unusual that we go and do commissioning of a ventilation system and say, wow, you know, you really do not have enough flow in this bedroom. So it either needs to be balanced or the ducts need to be reconfigured. So there's performance testing, and then there's what do you do with the results of the performance testing. Sometimes it ends up cycling back around, excuse me, to the builder, you know, this needs to be corrected. And then there's analysis. So the analysis, you have to use approved software under the ANSI system. And as part of the analysis, you're determining compliance with things like the energy code or whatever it is that your client has hired you to do with the energy rating. So, you know, here I list a few things, but really there are lots of different things that a client could want out of an energy rating. And the analysis also will come up with things like the energy consumption estimates. So one thing that I don't mention here, and I didn't mention early on about what an energy rating is I'm not saying anything about loads. So most of the energy rating software will generate design loads for heating and cooling. But it is not the same as Manual J. And in most jurisdictions, Manual J is really the only approved methodology for coming up with a load, a design load. You know, Manual J and, you know, in our energy code, at least, it says or equivalent. But her system is not based on the same foundation that Manual J is. And so it's not considered equivalent to Manual J. So I say that in the spirit of helping like level set the distinction between like a proper load calculation and an energy rating. But I also will acknowledge that there are plenty of people who look at the loads that an energy rating come up with and say, you know, that's close enough. Like that's a good number for me to design around. So I think what I want to like, you know, the bottom line for me is that somebody that is hanging out a shingle to do energy rating services probably sooner rather than later will be asked to come up with a load for a building. And although you can use the energy rating system to come up with a load, it would not be the load in terms of like what ACCA would recognize as a proper load calculation. I do think that there's a great sort of confluence of services to add load calculations, like actual proper ACCA Manual J load calculations to the services that an energy rating business would offer. You know, it would be completely outside the actual energy rating system, but just in terms of a business, I think that that's a great pairing. Okay, last component of an energy rating is the documentation. So you're working with your client, they'll tell you what they need from you. And right at the top there is the real estate valuation that Steve was referring to, is that the home energy rating system can be used to create documentation that supports a higher valuation and therefore can support a higher mortgage or a bigger mortgage. And for really high performance homes, that sometimes is essential. I mean, in the very early days of us providing the green addendum, which is that appraisal institute document, we heard lots and lots of stories from people who said, yeah, the bank had us, $80,000 upside down. We could not borrow. We had to borrow $80,000 less than it cost us to build the house because they just could not understand that our high performance home does cost more to build and was actually worth more than they were, anticipating, because as Tim said, the comps that they had just didn't really allow them to understand that about the homes. And I'm not trying to suggest that building a high performance home costs $80,000 more than a baseline home. I'm just saying that we heard from people that they really did have a problem with the valuation system. And I can only assume that it's gotten better in the intervening years because I don't hear that as much anymore. And we've been out there, issuing these green addendums, and the comps have become more widespread because there are more high performance homes. But in any case, that's not the only document that you can come up with. There's all these other documents and many more beyond this. So ResNet, which is the governing body, has been really active in positioning HERS as a way to document all kinds of things, from eligibility for special financing and tax credits to energy savings, so documenting energy savings and green credentials. And the software that creates the HERS score has the ability to create all kinds of reports. And so those reports might be very valuable to your clients. And so as an energy rater, one might, sort of look through the reports and say, wow, this is one that I really want to sort of market around. Like, I want to help people understand how this report would be valuable to them. And I want to sort of suggest that people get this report as part of my services. So this piece about the documentation is really driven mostly by the clients. Okay, so I just am going to pause there and invite people to ask questions if they need to, because we're going to go on to the next section of the presentation. That's
Thanks, Ling. So I think if you have a question, please raise your hand at this point. I think I was able to change the functionality to see the chat, but that may not have taken effect the way I'd hoped it to. So just raise your hand, and we'll make sure that we can unmute you so you can ask your question. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go on, and of course you can raise your hand at any point, and Bryn will break in and let you ask your question. Okay, so this is a part that I'd love to talk about. Vermont, there's a lot of history in Vermont with energy ratings. And this is the point at which I also need to mention Jeff Garpart. So when we get to the bottom of this, we should talk about Jeff. So ratings in Vermont started in 1987. There was a sort of group of energy rating organizations that constituted the Energy Rated Homes of America. And the Energy Rated Homes of America doesn't exist anymore. But in Vermont, we had Energy Rated Homes of Vermont. And there were I interviewed the guy who started Energy Rated Homes of Vermont, and he named a bunch of other places that were energy rated homes of whatever. And there were some surprising ones, like I think that Idaho maybe was one of the early adopters. In any case, Energy Rated Homes of America predated ResNet. And in Vermont, at least, and maybe the other states also that constituted energy rated homes in America, but in Vermont in particular, there was this idea that energy ratings was a way to support affordable housing. So at this point, energy ratings and things like Passive House and LEED are really associated in our minds with like high-end homes. But really early on, the purpose of energy ratings was to make this connection between the benefits of energy savings and affordable housing. So also early on, the energy rating system was recruited to support the demand side management programs that the utilities were required to have. And so already you can see what later on became ResNet's playbook about positioning energy ratings to be like the go-to way to document any, all kinds of stuff from the energy code to, these demand side management programs. And also, I mean, baked into that, this is a little bit of like inside ball here, but all of these utility programs, including what Efficiency Vermont does, we are required to document the savings, the energy savings that are generated by the work that we do. And that was also true way back in the day, 25 plus years ago for these demand side management programs, is the utilities had to have a way of saying like, okay, we spent some money on our program and here was the outcome. We were able to save 5,000 kilowatt hours or whatever. And so a home energy rating, because it comes up with energy estimates and energy savings estimates, if you compare it to some other, baseline home, that energy savings estimate became, what the demand side management programs needed. They needed to document savings. So in Vermont, Energy Rated Homes of Vermont also helped establish the Northeast HERS Alliance. So, what HERS stands for, but Northeast HERS Alliance is also just called NEHERS. And this is an industry advocacy and training organization, but that is the role that now ResNet occupies on the national level. And so because we were like really first out of the gate with our energy ratings, the state of Vermont, so the Department of Public Service, said, well, we need to make sure that people that are doing energy ratings in Vermont are actually credentialed and not just, out there sort of Wild West doing, energy ratings that don't adhere to any standards. And so the Department of Public Service created a system by which you could become credentialed by them, by the Department of Public Service, and only people who are credentialed by the Department of Public Service could issue ratings in Vermont. And that is actually still the case. So we'll get to the point at which we'll talk about how to procure a provider for an energy rating business. And if a new energy rating business gets into an arrangement with a provider, that provider has to be credentialed by the Department of Public Service if that rater is going to work in Vermont. Okay, so I think it's really important to understand what has been happening in Vermont. And this is where we start to get into the whole question of like, well, what's the real business opportunity here? Like how, is there enough work so that a business could sustain itself? So Efficiency Vermont has been providing energy ratings for more than 20 years, since really since the beginning of Efficiency Vermont. But before that, of course, there were other people providing ratings. But the important piece is that we've been providing energy ratings at no cost to the builder or to our client at no cost for almost 20 years. And I think the thing that's really important to understand about that is that people who have used energy ratings in the past, builders and developers, they might not really understand the value of a rating because we've been providing it to them for free. And, they may not understand, like, it costs money to do this work. It's, what we have been seeing is it's like about $1,500 to do a proper energy rating, because you have to set yourself up in business, but you also have to travel and do inspections and maintain your certification. And so that $1,500 might come as a surprise to people, and maybe you will charge $2,000. I don't know. In any case, we have been providing energy ratings through the residential new construction program, which Tim runs at this point. And in order to qualify for this free energy rating, you have to meet those new construction program standards, which is basically, there's a set of efficiency standards. And if you don't meet it, then you're not eligible for the free energy rating. And that standard has become more stringent over time. So Efficiency Vermont sort of peaked out at the number of energy ratings we did in a year. These dates might seem familiar to people, right? It's like 2007, huh? Why were we able to do so many energy ratings that year? Well, there were a lot of homes being built. That was like in the bubble. And in the years from 2007 to 2011, we had 40% of the new construction market. So, 40% of new permits, we were providing energy ratings on those homes. And that was the max that we had. Last year, or recently in any case, we did about 150 energy ratings. Yeah, right. So that was last year, 2021. And that 150 energy ratings were in an environment of 1,100 single family permits and 50 multifamily permits. So this bullet item right here, I think, is what you all should be thinking about as there's the market opportunity. This is how many new homes are permitted every year. And this is the number of those projects where the people involved in the project, whether that be the builder or the developer or the architect or even the owner, value participating in an energy efficiency program, and they value the rating. Maybe they value the rating. We're providing it for free, so we don't really know whether they value the rating. Now, there is reason to believe that 150 could grow substantially, but I do think that these numbers are really important starting place for you all to assess the market opportunity. So the Vermont Energy Code, which has been in effect since 1997, has a compliance path that is an energy rating. And we've had that compliance path since the very first energy code. And that predates by quite a bit the national compliance path with an energy rating. So you'll remember that I said ResNet has been actively involved in making sure that an energy rating was the go-to analysis for home efficiency, such that it could be used for compliance with all kinds of things, including the energy codes all throughout the country. But we predated that by a lot. And that was because we had energy rated homes of Vermont here. And by the time our first energy rating our first energy code came along, the energy rating industry had been well established in Vermont for 10 years. So recent updates to the code require duct testing and building leakage testing. So the code does not require an energy rating, but it does require this performance testing that I already said was part of doing an energy rating. And so in order to do that testing, you have to be qualified. Like, to meet the energy code and get your building leakage tested, you can't just have somebody show up with a blower door and do a leakage test. That person that does the leakage test in order to show compliance with the energy code has to be qualified. And being an energy rater is one of two ways that you can be qualified to do this performance testing for code compliance. And so somebody who sets themselves up as an energy rater has a whole line of business that actually doesn't involve energy ratings. It could involve doing performance testing to support code compliance. And there would be no rating at the end of that. It would just be like, you show up with your, you've got your qualifications, you show up with your duct testing equipment and your blower door, and you do some performance testing, and then you give the results of that to the builder, and they use that to show code compliance. Now, any energy rater might want to upsell the builder on like, yeah, I just, did this performance testing for you, but I also will do an energy rating for you for $800 more. And with that energy rating, you could, show your client what their future energy bills are likely to be. That could be, I think, a way that a builder might want to expand their services that they buy from an energy rater. And then the second bullet there under the energy code section there. So the code has been getting more and more stringent every about 5 years. The code is updated. The current code cycle is 3 years. So the last code was updated in 2020. The next update will be next year. And so that's the actual correct code cycle. When the code was established, it was supposed to be updated on a 3-year cycle, and it's, I don't think, ever hit that 3-year mark, but this time around it might. In any case, it has become more stringent, and as it becomes more stringent, the energy rating compliance path becomes more attractive because an energy rating gives a home credit for more stuff than what is just written in the code handbook. So the code is really only evaluating, maybe 70% of what an energy rating evaluates. And so an energy rating can be an easier way to show code compliance. Okay, so.
I think, yeah, I'll just underscore that point that, I mean, it's out of the 3 options, this is the one option that takes the onerous, if you want to call it that, of being compliant with the code off the builder's shoulders. And it, allows the builder to work with a third party to guarantee basically that they're going to be complying with the code, or confident that they're going to be complying with the code before they start building the house, as Ling talked about. So, most of the time as it works out in the state is a house is completed and then someone's asking for an RV certificate, and then a builder has to think about and figure out how somehow this house that they just finished is compliant with the code or not. And there's a lot of municipalities around the state that are actively working to do what they can locally to enhance code compliance in their towns and their areas. And this is one of the ways that really, I think, moves the needle on this, both for the interest of the municipality and what they're trying to achieve, and then also for the builders as well, to give them a clear pathway to being compliant with the code that doesn't put them at risk, of having built something that just doesn't meet the code and then being stuck in a very uncomfortable situation. And just one other note here too, just to underscore the point as well, as far as the market potential, the number of permits pulled here, again, as Ling noted, is really what we should be looking at, because those 150 that were done through our program in 2021, those 150 represent homes that go above code and well above code at this point. That was how they got the rating from us. So, the market is, represents that larger number there for sure, of the, 1,100 potential single family homes. So just some thoughts to put into the head of around how to work through the conversation with builders to get them going down this path.
Yeah, and I also see in my notes here that something else that I want to mention. So I said that the code requires blower door testing, building leakage testing and duct leakage testing, and that being an energy rater is one of the qualifications that allow you to provide that service. The other one is BPI, and I just wanted to bring that up because of the folks that are on the call here. There is a market opportunity there for the folks that are BPI certified to support code compliance, totally aside from energy ratings. And then this is, really important in terms of the market, is that Efficiency Vermont is out of the business of providing free energy ratings as of December 31st. And already there are new homes that are being started, permitted, new sales that are happening for homes that will be built, even starting now, and we're not providing free energy ratings on those. We have stopped accepting new homes into the program as of January of this year. So all the energy ratings that we're providing through the end of the year, those are just mopping up the last bits of what was enrolled with us last year.
And
Okay.
I just wanted to add to that, Ling, and moving forward, Efficiency Vermont is still offering a certification pathway so that homeowners or builders who want to have a
We'll get
Efficiency
there.
Vermont
We have a whole
cert-
section on.
Is that
on our-
okay? You have a whole
yeah.
section of that? All right.
Yeah.
All right. I wasn't sure if you were going to cover it there or not. So yeah, so there's another Ling will get into that so there's another market demand piece coming up. All right.
Okay, so residential building energy standards. I don't know if you folks even know what RBs stands for. Nobody ever says all the words out loud, but this is our energy. This is the residential energy code in Vermont is RBs. So I'm saying here, this is RBs 2020 because this is the code that's in effect now, but also the new version or the new update to the code is already, the work is well underway. We have, you know, an idea what it's going to look like, but the horse trading is, you know, happening right now about what will ultimately end up in RBs 2023. And for sure, all of the performance testing that I mentioned and the HERS compliance path, that's still going to be part of it. And again, at every time the code becomes more stringent, the HERS compliance path becomes more attractive. So an example of why that would be is that in if you don't use the HERS compliance path, you only are looking at the attributes of the thermal enclosure of the building to determine code compliance. But something that could be accounted for in an energy rating and contribute to code compliance through an energy rating that is not contributing to code compliance in any other way is the efficiency of the water heater. You know, because if the water heater is not part of the thermal enclosure, but you do get credit for that in an energy rating. So that's just one example of why it would be easier to meet the code with an energy rating than the other compliance paths. Okay, so right now the energy code is self-certifying, but that doesn't mean it's optional. Almost all new homes in Vermont do need to meet the energy code. And because it's self-certifying, it sometimes feels like a burden to the builders. As Steve was mentioning, sometimes builders really just want somebody to come in and tell them, like, here's what you need to do to meet code. Here's what about your plan does meet code, and here's what it doesn't meet code. And here's what you need to change in order to bring this design into compliance. And after you make that change, I will come through and do an inspection and make sure it does meet the code. That, to many builders, is a much easier way to meet code than for them to pour through the code handbook and try to figure it out themselves. And also to sign a certificate where they're like, well, I think I did this right? Especially people who have worked out of state and they are accustomed to having code officials come through and like sign off on things. It's very dicey for them to say, like, what? I'm signing off myself? Like, how do I know that I am signing for the right things? So some builders appreciate self-certifying. They don't like people telling them what to do. Other builders are like, wow, I really don't like this. So at this point, in our experience, developers are the most motivated to show code compliance because they're still around. If they, build a home in, 2020 and they are building the home next door in 2021, and the person that they sold the home to last year is seeing them there every day, if there's an issue with the house, they're like right on the front lines of hearing it from the neighbors. And so they really need to have everything all lined up. So in terms of people that are all about like making sure that their code compliance stuff is in order, the developers are sort of at the top of the list. Again, this is a question of like, where's your market for energy ratings? And as I said, energy ratings can be used to show code compliance, and it provides more flexibility than the other pathways. All new homes subject to the energy code have to, have a leakage test done, as we've mentioned. There needs to be duct leakage testing for homes that have the ducts outside the pressure boundary. So that turns out to be very few homes building with ducts outside the house, but it's not very few homes that need a blower door test all of the homes that need to meet energy code do need to have a blower door test to show code compliance. So one of the other pathways is called res check. This is one of the other compliance pathways is res check. And you can't use res check to show code compliance with the stretch code. So in some places in Vermont, it's not the basic energy code that is the local requirement, it's the stretch code. And an energy rating is a much better way to show compliance in those towns because the other pathways are harder or impossible. You can't use res check to show code compliance in stretch code towns. So the energy code has a low compliance outside of our program. Everybody in our program meets the energy code, but outside of our program, there really isn't good compliance, even though it is the law of the land. People need to build to the code. So there again is an issue about market opportunity. If it's low compliance, there's a huge opportunity there to help people show compliance with the code where there hasn't been proof of compliance in the past. And as I said, the code is in the middle of being updated. All right, so this is where the program has been. And this, again, I think is important for you all to understand what the expectations are out in the marketplace. So it's been a free service. You do not have to pay to participate with Efficiency Vermont Residential New Construction Program, and you don't have to pay for the energy rating. That's ending, but in the past, it has been a free service. So our service has always included building science consulting and free energy ratings. So the building science consulting part is the much higher value there. And our customers probably don't really understand that the consulting is not fundamentally an energy rating. They think of the consulting as being part of the energy rating. And so I advise anybody going into the energy rating business to include building science consulting in their services because it's really valuable. It's much more valuable than getting a score at the end of the day. Our program has been getting more stringent over time. It's in part related to the energy code getting more stringent, but also we've been looking for ways to just push people ahead. That's the purpose of Efficiency Vermont, is to save energy. So in order to get that free energy rating over time, our participants have had to build to a higher and higher standard. We, right at the moment, have 2 tiers of performance. There's the base certification and the high performance homes certification. Going forward, and there will be a whole separate slide on our Efficiency Vermont Certified 3.0 program, but going forward, we will not have 2 tiers of performance. We provide energy code compliance assistance. Some parts of the energy code have nothing to do with the nothing to do with things that are evaluated under the energy rating, but we're the folks that probably know the most about the energy code. So we would call out things in the course of our design review. We might call out things that would be a problem for our energy code compliance, even if it doesn't factor into an energy rating. We have provided a cash incentive under our new construction program, for the whole time that Efficiency Vermont has been around. Optional additional things that we provide through our program are the Green Addendum, which I mentioned is the Appraisal Institute document, Energy Star certification, National Green Building Standard certification, LEED, CS+. So we're seeing that the energy rating can open the door to these other standards or these other, green qualifications. And we wanted to open that up to our customers, so that they could pursue something like Energy Star through our program, because we were already providing the energy rating that is the foundation of Energy Star. So as I've mentioned, Efficiency Vermont Certified 2.0 is no longer available after the end of this year. Okay, so who have our customers been? There are builders who just commit to being in our program and building to our standard every house. So those are reliable customers for us. Developers that need an energy rating to show code compliance, those are reliable customers for us. So anybody that's pursuing passive house, or I should say any of those other green building standards, that they need they have come through us because they can get a free energy rating to do that. Sometimes we just get owners that participate with us because they want an energy rating and they feel like it's a valuable piece of paper for them to have to document the energy efficiency of their home, or to support a better home valuation so that they can get a loan to cover their construction costs. And then there definitely have been builders who have participated with us just to get access to the federal tax credit, which has come and gone and is back at this point. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so how to become an energy rater. So again, I'm going to pause here just because we're at the end of that section and starting a new section. Please, chime in now if you feel like there's something you want to ask that wasn't clear in that section. No?
Yeah,
Okay.
and anybody, if you want to just give your own perspective or experience, that's helpful too. So it doesn't have to just be questions. Again, this always is get more out of it when we all have a chance to talk to each other. So raise your hand if you want to enable the chat, the ability to unmute yourself, sorry. And I do think I've enabled the chat feature at this point. So, any questions or thoughts that come up, you can just capture them there too. So
yeah.
Thanks.
I just wanted to build on what Ling was just talking about homeowners seeking ratings to qualify the energy efficiency and performance of their home. I know that there have been recent surveys done by the Home Builders Association, both in the US and Canada, that show that that's actually a top 10 sort of must-have for new home builders. Like that is a highly valued item for them, having a third-party verification of the performance, and and that can be a number of things, but many of which involve a rating. So don't want to underestimate that also as part of the market demand.
Right. So an energy rater can market their services directly to home buyers.
Exactly.
And you said it's a top 10 for home builders, but I think you meant it's a top 10 for home buyers.
Home buyers, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I just realized that I didn't mention Jeff Gebhardt at the time that I wanted to mention Jeff Gebhardt. So Jeff Gebhardt has, he supported the new construction program since even before the days of Efficiency Vermont. And he was instrumental nationally in getting the real estate industry to adopt the benefits of HERS into the real estate listings, the MLS that Steve mentioned, and also to support the development of the green appraisal. And so, I don't really know what all the work was that Jeff Gebhardt does, but he, really, like, that was another way that Vermont was really foundational in bringing the value of energy ratings to, sort of a broader platform.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of Jeff's work was really around trying to motivate the, excuse me, real estate industry to pay attention to this stuff and to really look at it for the value that it can bring to valuation of a property. And so, he was a huge advocate for the integration of this and the purpose for having ratings done in the first place to the relationship to market valuation and real estate sales. So there are definitely, other states and other places around the country where this is very much integrated, and it's just a part of the fabric of how real estate works and properties are valued. And there's work that happens here in the Northeast as well that, is continuing to move the needle on that. So it's not like it's something that's behind us. It's something that continues to evolve, and the industry kind of integrating this stuff also is impacted by policies as well. And the state of Vermont being more aggressive in our climate policies as well. This could be something that gets underscored at the state level as well, in the years to come. So Jeff did a lot of great work over his time with us here.
Okay, so let's talk about ResNet. ResNet is a member organization. They base their work on the ANSI standard, but ResNet doesn't own the ANSI standard. The ANSI standard is like all ANSI standards out there for anybody to use. ResNet is currently the only organization that is basing their system on that standard. So it can sort of seem like ResNet and energy ratings are the same thing, but they're not. Someday there could be a different organization that says we're going to, base our system on that ANSI standard, and then it would be sort of a competitive marketplace with ResNet and this other organization. But so far, ResNet's the only game in town. So they are a standards making body. There are standards that are part of the ResNet system that are not the ANSI standard. So there's the ANSI standard, and then there's a bunch of ResNet standards that are kind of like around the ANSI standard, and all of those things together, the ANSI standard plus all those other little ResNet standards, that's what constitutes the ResNet system. And then, those other standards are things around quality and training and, how raters conduct themselves. That's the stuff that's outside the ANSI standard. And ResNet is also an advocacy organization to support the market for energy ratings. And they have been really, really successful at that. So it is not at all a mischaracterization to say that ResNet is politically active. They are out there, advocating for ratings to be everywhere you look. And in some ways, it does feel like they're everywhere. So how is ResNet structured? This is sort of set out chronologically here. As a rater, the first interaction with ResNet that you would have would be through a training provider. And the training provider does the initial qualifications of a rater and provides ongoing education, because that is required of raters in the ResNet system, is that every year or every 3 years that you show on continuing education. There's the rater. So once a rater is certified by a training provider, they're a fully fledged rater. There are other things that are like raters. There are RFIs, which is a rating field inspector. There are energy modelers, which is just the rating side of things and not any kind of data collection or consultation. A rater is like all of that rolled into one, and then the other two, which are the field inspectors and the modelers, are like pieces of what an energy rater would do, broken out separately. And the purpose for having those 3 different certifications is that some organizations have a better, can be more profitable by breaking out functions among different people. It's really a business, it's like a business model question. We at Efficiency Vermont, we've never used energy modelers or field inspectors. Everybody in-house has been a fully fledged rater that can do all of those functions. So a rater works under a rating provider. And then there's a quality assurance provider, which mostly provides services to the rating provider, not directly to the rater. So at VEIC, that's the parent organization of Efficiency Vermont, we've always rolled all of these functions into one. We're a business that we used to train our own raters and provide we didn't usually provide continuing ed credits, but we did train our own raters. We obviously had raters in-house. We were our own rating provider, and we did our own quality assurance. So that is one model, but it's an unusual model. For the most part, no rater works under a fully integrated, vertically integrated organization. Okay, so how to become an energy rater. 1, get yourself trained and certified. 2, choose which certifications to pursue based on what services you're going to offer. So when you get trained and certified, there are optional additional certifications that you can get. So for instance, if you're going to certify homes to Passive House, you need to get certified by FIAS, Passive House Institute of the US, in order to be a FIAS Plus energy rater. And there are, all of those certifications, well, all of the different services that you can provide, they generally will each require their own certification. Even something as straightforward as Energy Star, you need to be qualified to certify Energy Star. And then to actually do business as an energy rater, you need an energy rating provider. So you need to engage a rating provider. So I'm just looking at my notes here for this slide. So energy rater training is offered through NEHRS. So recall that that's our regional industry organization in the Northeast. So that rater training is offered for $2,600. It's not the only place that you can get certified as a rater, but that's a local one. Yeah, so how to choose an energy rating provider. You have to pay the provider. You're paying for your provider for services that they provide to you. And so how you choose an energy rating provider would be a question of what services do they offer and how much do they charge you as the rater, and what kind of support are they going to give you as a rater. So professional and technical support, continuing education opportunities, things like that. So after you've gotten your providership in order, you establish your business, you're out there deciding what kind of services you want to offer and who your customers are going to be and how you're going to market to them. That's, to me, all tucked under establishing your business. You do need to charge enough to be profitable. I think that in Vermont in particular, we have a real problem with businesses that are always skating on the margin of profitability. And I don't think that that's sustainable. So, this is my one chance to encourage you, if you're going to become an energy rater, to not lowball. There are a lot of costs that go into being an energy rater. And it is a valuable service, even though Efficiency Vermont has been out here undermining the understanding of how valuable it is by providing free energy ratings for 20 years. It is a valuable service. And we need energy raters to stay in business and be profitable. So you gotta charge enough. And then you do need to stay in good graces, both with ResNet and, with your rater, with your providership. And so you have to stay up to date on your continuing ed credits. You have to keep up to date with changes in the standard. You have to, whatever it is that your providership offers, keeping your analysis software up to date. There's just ongoing stuff that you need to do to stay in good graces. So keep finding ways to make your customers happy. So over time, an energy rating business might grow to include home inspections, or, in the case of Ethan, you could start with home inspections and expand to energy ratings. You could do energy consulting. You could do building commissioning. So, maybe nothing having to do with blower door testing or, an energy rating. There could just be building commissioning services. Maybe design services become part of what you do. And, Ben is already out here doing design services. Maybe, energy rating seems like a secondary thing to add to that business. So energy ratings are just part of a constellation of efficiency services that support good buildings. Ratings can be a powerful tool to make homes healthier and more environmentally friendly. And so advocating for the role of raters and ratings by serving on ResNet committees or contributing to NEHRS activities, participating in the energy code process, they're all ways to make sure that the industry is strong enough to have a big impact. So, I'd say it's part of being a rater that you also support the industry through these advocacy organizations, and even things outside the advocacy organizations, like supporting the energy code process. So this is just a snippet of a description of the NEHRS energy rating course. I'm not going to pause really on this very long. You're going to get the slide deck afterwards, and you can sort of see what they offer. This is the basic energy rating certification. There would be lots of additional things, some of them provided by ResNet and some of them completely outside of ResNet, that would be optional, that you could add on to your energy rating certification, that would allow you to sort of market a more well-rounded service. Okay, so future of HERS in Vermont. Here's where we talk about what the business environment will be for energy ratings. So actually, before I start this, I'm just going to pause there and let anybody raise their hand that has a question about that last section about how to become an energy rater and how to find clients for yourself.
Yeah, go ahead,
Ethan.
Ethan.
You have to unmute yourself after Bryn unmutes you, maybe. There we go.
Not sure it's exactly related to that last section, but I was curious, a general idea of what some of this equipment might cost.
Yeah. So well, gosh, I put a budget together for equipment for Tim, and I can't remember now what the bottom line number was. So the basics that you would need for energy ratings would be a blower door and a duct blaster kit. Let me think if there's anything else. Yeah, you need a way to measure flow. So it could be like furnace or air conditioning flow, or it could be ventilation flow. And so those three pieces of equipment together are, you know, sort of on the order of like $4,000. And that's really just the basics. Like, you know, you might also want to have combustion safety measuring equipment. You know, there's lots of stuff that you could have beyond that, like an infrared camera. But those three things are really the minimum that's required. So, you know, we're sort of in the $4,000 to $8,000 range, I would say, for equipment.
Excellent, thank you.
And maybe other folks that are on the call have more insight into that. Okay, we'll go on. You can put it in the chat if you have any thoughts on cost of equipment. Also, there are two big players out there in the blower door world. There's the Energy Conservatory and what's the yellow and red one? I can't remember the name of those guys. Retrotech? Yeah, Retrotech. So Retrotech has ketchup and mustard theme going on with their equipment. And I believe that the Retrotech equipment is lower cost in general than the Energy Conservatory equipment. And my numbers are all sort of based on Energy Conservatory stuff. Okay, so broader context.
Retrotech will give you a larger upper body because I think they weigh a lot more than the other ones too. Okay, so Vermont at the state level is very interested in pushing forward energy efficiency. Efficiency Vermont is part of that, but there are other things going on outside of Efficiency Vermont too. And at the legislative level, we have a comprehensive energy plan that is setting the course for, you know, what Vermont is going to do around our carbon emissions. And so this is like part of the background here is that there's always going to be support for energy efficiency in Vermont because we have a legislative mandate to do that. Residential, okay, I don't really know why I put this box in the way that I did. I say here, residential energy code compliance is slipping. I don't know that that is entirely true, but what is true is that because there's a code compliance path for energy ratings, using energy ratings, I think the demand for energy ratings to support code compliance is going to grow. I say again here, currently there's no political will to change the enforcement mechanism, which is, again, at this point, it's like self-certifying. And that also is not, I don't think that that's entirely correct,
but there's no political will. I get really mixed messages on this. On the one hand, I hear it is self-certifying and, you know, that's not going to change anytime soon. And the other hand, I do hear like there's a real interest in finding that next thing that we can do around code compliance that goes beyond self-certification. It's what's not probably being considered right now is starting up a whole new agency of code inspectors. That's not, nobody's really thinking that. But the thing that is the most likely avenue for code compliance enforcement would be to build on the energy rating system, because that is a system that already is established and can be market-based. And again, I'm getting mixed messages. The folks that are working on the next version of the energy code tell me that there is interest at the Department of Public Service in finding a way to improve code compliance and to maybe change the enforcement mechanism. So I wish I had written that second box in a different way. That's not, all that stuff in there is not entirely correct.
Just one thing to point to that is that, you know, the way that the code is written right now, self-certifying code, but any enforcement as is written into the code right now comes down to the local level, meaning town by town. And what the towns are recognizing that, you know, within the framework of the statute and how it's written, you know, there's some limitations around what they can do. I mean, a local town and municipality can choose to have code officials and do enforcement, but I know my town of, you know, 1,000 people here in Shrewsbury, you know, it's pulling teeth to try to get anybody to serve on a board at the local level anyway, so that's not going to happen. But there's quite a few towns that have seen and gotten involved with this long enough to see that there's certain ways and certain levers to pull within how the code is written and works to get better local compliance. And that pathway comes directly back to HERS ratings. It's one of those things. It's the one mechanism out of the three for, you know, options for complying with the code that has a little bit more validation behind it at the local level. It basically allows a town to get the understanding of actual adherence to the requirements of the code verified without requiring a town to take on the cost of doing that, because it's the HERS rater who's basically providing that service. And really then the only burden that gets shifted to a builder is the cost of hiring that rater. But, you know, as we've been walking through all of this and Ling's laying out the case, it's a pretty good sell to a builder to take on the cost of doing this and absorbing that into the overall cost of building. It's not something they're used to doing, so they'll probably, you know, there'll be some work to convince them. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it really is a no-brainer for what the deliverable is that's provided through this service.
So the energy code, there is some legislation out there that's sort of secondary to the energy code that requires that any town that issues a certificate of occupancy, not all towns do, but, you know, some towns require a certificate of occupancy before the building can be used. Those towns, they must collect proof of code compliance before they can issue the certificate of occupancy. So, you know, think of all the towns, you know, where a CO is required. Those towns are supposed to be collecting proof of code compliance. So that would be places where already there's a mechanism for, you know, ensuring code compliance beyond just the self-certification mechanism. And there are some towns in Vermont, Steve can tell us which ones, that have adopted the stretch code. And you'll recall that the stretch energy code really does point people toward the energy rating code compliance pathway, because there are fewer compliance pathways to begin with, plus it's a more stringent code. And as we've discussed, an energy rating is a good way to show compliance with the code as the standard gets ratcheted upward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. Go ahead.
Steve also mentioned that there are some towns that have code officials, like code inspection officials, like Colchester is one of them.
Yeah, and those towns that are impacted by the the rule, and the law regarding collecting code certificates for certificates of occupancy, it's come up over the years of, well, we're collecting these certificates, but are we responsible for verifying what's on this code certificate? And the answer is no. You know, that the official, whoever that may be at the local level, is just required to collect the certificate. But it does leave a certain level of liability questionably out there for the town to accept the code certificate that they don't know is accurately depicting what's in the home. So there's also some movement there of, like, you know, town attorneys like trying to figure out, well, how can we mitigate the risk for the town in collecting the certificate and verifying that the information is correct. There you go. The HERS certificate, HERS pathway is the way to take that off the shoulders of the town as opening them up to a risk. So yeah, these are things that are starting to just become a little bit more a part of the conversation here now. South Burlington is the one municipality right now in the state that has adopted stretch code. It's been discussed by many other towns, and it may come to pass with some other towns that will make that step. You know, South Burlington's a pretty big market for new construction, so you know, it is not insignificant the impact of their choice to do that locally.
Yeah, and I was reminded that there are some towns that are considering adopting locally the requirement that all new construction have an energy rating. That hasn't come to pass yet in any town, but it's been discussed.
Yep.
I think Heinsberg and Richmond are the two that I've heard of considering that.
Yep, and then Woodstock and some towns in the Upper Valley on the eastern side of the state as well.
Okay, so going to the third box here. So when I say here that Efficiency Vermont has little room to maneuver, what I'm saying is that we're only allowed to support projects that exceed the energy code. And as the energy code becomes more and more stringent, it gives us less room to maneuver. So we're not going to go back to where we were 5 years ago, you know, when we were doing many hundreds of energy ratings a year under our umbrella. But going forward, we fully intend to continue to support energy ratings and efficient technologies and high performance homes, and we're supporting builders and designers. And so the Efficiency Vermont program will still be here, but what we're not going to do is we're not going to go back to a time when we are providing free energy ratings. So you don't have to worry about us eating your lunch in the future if you get into the energy rating business. And the reason that I know that to be the case is that because we really can't claim the space where we can claim savings is getting smaller and smaller. We just really will not have the ability to support that in-house, energy ratings in-house. So, and then Tim already mentioned this, the awareness and desire for energy efficient construction is, for younger buyers, it's, like a noticeable trend that they are more motivated by environmental concerns and that they see having a certification for their home as being high value. So this is, this section of the presentation is about like the future and what, I don't know what they say about people who try to tell the future are foolish, I'm sure, but here are some things that we do know about the future. So right now, our program for next year, and even for homes that are being built this year, but are gonna, that are not in our Efficiency Vermont Certified 2.0 program, there is a carve out for supporting energy ratings at 50% of the cost, maxing out at $750. So we are supporting the demand for energy ratings by subsidizing the cost of an energy rating. You do have to participate in our program to get that. So it would have to be people that are building in excess of the energy code. And I'll show you shortly what the new program requirements are. But we are out here, we're not providing free energy ratings anymore, but we're buying down the cost by about 50%. So energy rating services right now are being provided outside of Efficiency Vermont, and they're being provided by energy rating companies that are located outside of Vermont. There are no energy rating companies that are established in Vermont. So Efficiency Vermont, we actually stopped doing energy ratings late last year. And even though we're still providing energy ratings for free, we're not actually doing the energy rating. It's companies located outside of Vermont. So I think that that's important to understand, that they're already establishing a toehold in the market here. And it's not something that we at Efficiency Vermont really wanted, but because there weren't any energy rating companies established here, we, had to send our business to those other companies. And we would very happily send our business to companies that are based in Vermont, if there are such companies. So the need for lower door testing is going to increase. And that's because showing compliance with the energy code is required, and a blower door test is required as part of that. And already the energy code maximum leakage rate of 3 air changes an hour at 50 pascals is pretty aggressive. It's probably going to get more aggressive than that. So going forward, you will only be able to build super tight homes in Vermont. And to show compliance with that, you absolutely have to do a blower door test. And then once a blower door test is done, it also brings up questions about things like ventilation and replacement air for things like wood stoves and, range hoods. And so once you start getting into all the building performance issues, then the services of an energy rating company become much more attractive. So Vermont, as I discussed, has a really long history with energy rating. And because of that, it's broadly recognized what the value is, both at the state level, the agency level like us, but also to customers. Customers and builders, they understand the value of energy ratings because we've been here for so long that they've seen what an energy rating is. And then this is, much more fresh information here, but the federal tax credits have been renewed both for 2022, but also going forward. And this is not a short-term thing. They've been renewed for 10 years, and that is really a big deal. So 45L is the new construction tax credit, and homes is part of the same Inflation Reduction Act, but it is for existing homes. And under the homes program, one of the ways to get that rebate money is through an analysis that models the energy rating savings. And none of the rules have been written about how this is all going to roll out yet. But what I anticipate is that there will be some softwares some energy modeling softwares that will be approved. And it's possible that energy rating software will be one of those approved softwares. So an energy rater could support both compliance with the new tax credit for new construction and the new rebates for existing homes. I'm just going to flip through these really quickly. So I don't mention this anywhere else, but I just want to say here that the new tax credit starting next year is $5,000. And so that's really substantial money for a builder, and particularly for multifamily projects. And it probably will be the biggest driver for energy ratings. Despite everything that I've said in the last hour plus, probably the tax credit is going to end up being the biggest driver for the demand for energy rating services. So it's up to $5,000. You absolutely have to get an energy rating in order to qualify for that. And you have to be certified to zero energy ready homes. Okay, so we will have a program. We do already have a program that is mostly for projects completing in 2023, although maybe for some projects that complete at the end of this year. So under this new program, some incentives do not require certification. And so we have an incentive for balanced ventilation and for drain water heat recovery. Again, you're going to get these slides, so you'll see all these numbers that are on the screen. But there are some incentives that do require certification. So I'll show again in a moment what the certification requires, but there's a $500 all electric incentive if you become certified, and certification requires an energy rating. So here's going to be another driver of demand for energy ratings in Vermont is our program. Again, we rebate up to $750 of the rating fee, and that $500 all electric incentive is available if somebody becomes certified with an energy rating. The energy rating is contracted directly between the customer and the rater. Efficiency Vermont is not involved in that relationship between the customer and the rater. The energy rater, the way that we have our program now, the energy rater is not responsible for verification. So in the past, when Efficiency Vermont was the energy rater, we did both verification and energy rating. But the new program is the energy rater is not doing verification. But realistically, customers don't really get that distinction there, and they will look to an energy rater to understand how to verify, how to qualify, to make sure that their projects do qualify. And as a result, an energy rater probably is going to have to be very familiar with our program. And the rebate for Efficiency Vermont Certified 3.0, it goes directly to the customer, not to the rater. Okay, so here's the standard. It's all very small on the screen, but the main thing that I want to point out is the wall insulation. So if, for folks who know new construction, this is a pretty aggressive wall assembly. So we're not saying here what the wall needs to look like, but we're saying that it's a minimum of R32, and of that R32, at least R12 of it needs to be continuous insulation. And so even if you don't take on board anything else on this table here, take on board that the Efficiency Vermont Certified 3.0 is a pretty aggressive efficiency standard. Also, I will point out the air leakage. 1 air change an hour at 50 pascals is a pretty darn tight house. So we're talking about a high performance home. That's what you have to build in order to become certified. And again, certification requires an energy rating, and the energy rating can be rebated 50% up to $750 from Efficiency Vermont.
I posted both the program overview and also the Certified 3.0 standard in the chat if you want to. Those are the links on our website to those documents if you want to read more.
Yeah, and you'll have all of those links in the slide deck that Bryn sends to you afterwards. Okay, so Efficiency Excellence Network. So we at Efficiency Vermont run this EEN network, and within the network there are different trade groups like electricians and heat pump installers and architects. There will be, when there are energy rating companies in Vermont, there will be a network, a trade group for energy raters. So we will have some way to support energy rating companies, but that's still being worked out on our side. So we don't really have anything to say about that yet, like what that support will amount to. But once you join the EN, you're eligible for all the benefits that come to anybody in the network, which is that we, help with advertising. So, we're trying to boost the profile of the network members. There's a system of referrals. We provide free trainings all year long. We provide building science consultation and support. So the way that that would work with, for instance, a new construction builder is they might have a detail and they send it to us and say, what do you think? Is this a good way to detail my slab edge insulation? And we will provide consultation for things like that. That is also the real estate that an energy rater might occupy, that kind of building science consultation and support. And then discounted attendance to our annual conference. Those are all benefits that are just part of being in the network. And those benefits would flow to an energy rating company that's part of the network, apart from some future support that we might have for the energy rating industry, like in general. It's, those details have yet to be figured out. Okay, so that's the end of
It's also a networking opportunity too. I mean, that's another big part of what we try to do with the EEN network is to do the network side of things, you know, and to really expose you to the people that you want to be partnering with and make those business connections as well.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. That's it. And particularly with energy raters, it's often a business to business kind of model. And so that networking piece would be particularly beneficial to builders and raters.
Yeah, and one other last thing is just the how people can find our contractors and partners as well, or find a pro listing on our website, which, you know, our customer support team uses and directs anyone who calls in or reaches out to Efficiency Vermont to that listing to try to connect with professionals and contractors and partners in the state. This is a list that's only going to be populated by EEN members here very shortly. We're updating that listing, and so, you know, that's who we want to be pushing consumers here in Vermont to, is the people in our EEN, because we know that we have a shared value and mission and understanding of delivered services. So that's another way that people will be able to find you as well.
Yeah, and that's really how the referrals happen, is through that the network listing on our website. Okay, so the rest of these slides here are resources. This page is all about becoming an energy rater. And then this page is about our program. And here's the find a builder, or find a contractor listing on our website. Somewhere in here, I think on this one. Yeah, so this right here is the energy rating. No, I'm sorry, the energy code like homepage on the state website. So there's information there, so you can understand more about what's required for the energy code. And then this is information about our program. So I really feel like understanding all of these things here about what it takes to be an energy rater, and what where the demand is going to be for energy ratings, both in terms of energy code and also through our program, that's really the information that can support this question about, like, can I make a profitable business out of this? And I sort of am realizing right now that I didn't put anything in here about the cost of maintaining certification. As an energy rater, you're required every 3 years to have 12 credits of continuing education. And because the EEN is out here providing trainings all year long, every year, that is a likely place for an energy rater to be able to get those continuing ed credits for free if you're in our network. And so that is something that is a cost for most energy raters, but in Vermont, that it would likely be free through Efficiency Vermont. Okay, so really, I'm done. Done talking. It's a lot of talking. Here's our contact information. Again, you're going to get the slide deck, so you'll have all of this. And just want to open it up. I see there's 22 things in the chat. Bryn, is there something I need to know? I think this is
no. Thanks, everyone. We are a little over time, but we're happy to stay and answer any of your questions. We can get you off mute just to have a conversation with us too. A lot easier. A couple quick plugs in there. We've started a office hours once a month where you can come and ask Steve Spatz any questions that you have about residential building energy standards. Our next call for that will be next week. You don't need to pre-register, just save the date and click the link for that. Hop in for as long as you want, ask your questions, and then it's right during the lunch hour. You can call in. You don't have to, be at your computer to be able to take advantage of that. If you have any questions, of course, reach out to me. And then I also posted a direct link to where you can find our recorded training. So anything that we've presented on within the recent past that you want to see again or share with others, you can find those links on that page there. This will be, this particular training will be uploaded to that likely by the end of next week. And yeah, lots of great opportunities here. really, you know, an immense amount of information to digest. So again, we're here to answer your questions, so please don't be shy.
Well, to to piggyback on that, you know, just to pull it in as far as, you know, how to get there with this, you know, the knowledge base required to become ResNet certified and to be able to provide this service is not a huge hill to climb. You know, I think for those of you that I know who have joined us on the call today, you know, your background and understanding building science and building systems, you know, is the foundation needed in order to be able to pass the test and be able to become a certified rater. So it's not something that is a huge hill to climb. Again, you know, you're here for a reason by joining this call. So if we can be of any help as well in, you know, preparation and getting you kind of oriented in the right direction to know what you need to know to be successful and passing those certifications, we're here to help on that too.
So I saw that there was a question about fee structure. I think that was Ethan asked that question. I think, Ethan, what you're asking about is provider, like what would a provider charge? And I actually have no idea about that because we've always been our own provider. But my guess is that there's a cost per rating in addition to a cost just to have that relationship with the provider. So, you know, just pulling numbers out of nowhere, you know, they might charge $1,000 a year to, you know, just have that provider relationship. And for that, they're going to provide you things like making sure that your certification is in good order and that your ratings adhere to the standard and you have your continuing ed in, you know, in place. But then they might also charge you $20 per rating, you know, something like that. So if those numbers are just made up numbers, but that's just an example of the way that a fee structure might work with a provider.
Right. And obviously all costs that would be folded into your fee structure for providing services, you know, to builders.
Right. You would have to account for those costs when you set your fees for an energy rating.
We do have a really short survey after this. Again, it really helps inform additional trainings that we provide, improve our own presentations. So if you can take just a minute or two to give us a couple of your thoughts, we really do appreciate it. Hope you have a great day and hope to see many of you soon. So take care and reach out at any time. Thank you.
Thanks for attending. Bye, everybody.
Yep.
Take
Thanks,
care,
everyone.
everyone.